I am your host, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my office at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Also joining me is Cam Miller, our presenter for this evening, and my assistant, BCM Visitor Services Associate Heather Cook. So thank you all for being here. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, and our members. If you are not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. Now let's meet tonight's presenter. For 20 years, Cam Miller has been an independent, award-winning filmmaker and composer, working with the Cincinnati Reds, the Cincinnati Bengals, and dozens of clients all over the world. He also produces local history films, which have included Old Latonia, Riverfront Remembered, and Our True Blues, the Covington Blue Sox film, which inspired the Smoke Justice Sports Bar in Covington, Kentucky. So thank you so much, Cam, for being here. Before we get started, we would love to hear from our viewers tonight. So if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I'll be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Now the fun part, our quiz question. The first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat on Zoom or Facebook Live wins a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize, and most importantly, bragging rights. So tonight's question is, what was the name of the rule the National League came up with in 1876 to keep other professional teams from playing in National League cities? So please get those answers in the chat. And then we're going to stop sharing our screen. And Cam, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm happy to be back here. I'm going to do things a little bit different tonight. Usually you see me sitting at a desk with my cool record collection behind me. But I thought, I am going to have this whiteboard. I've got a tiny little marker here, so I may be scribbling behind me as we talk, or I may just go for my notes here and ramble. But one thing that is for sure, you're going to learn something, I think, today. Now, if you've seen my film, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go to YouTube, search for Cam Miller Films, and the film Our Shining Stars. Now, the film Our Shining Stars, the story of the Covington Stars Baseball Club, tells you about the history of professional baseball in Northern Kentucky, specifically the Covington Stars. There's also a presentation I've done a couple of times here over the last couple of years on the Ludlow Professional Baseball Club in 1875. And I'm working on a small book, which I hope will be out in the fall. I'm going to self-publish it, which is going to tell that story and tell you the records of the team and who played for them. There's a lot of missing links in there that I'm trying to weave together to tell the story. So look for that later. You can find that on Google my name and it'll pop up, Cam Miller Films. But I thought tonight I would start with a story about the Reds. And this is what this presentation is kind of angled toward. I've told you the story of Covington. I've told you the story of Ludlow and some of the presentations I've done. But let's kind of meld them all together and look at it from the angle of the Cincinnati Reds and what they did and didn't do and some of the trials and tribulations they had. So we start from the beginning. So in 1866, there is this new sport called baseball that was developed from games like town ball and rounders and English and European games. It started to populate the area before the Civil War, and soldiers ended up playing it. But then, as more and more soldiers came home and they went to their respective cities, they started forming clubs. Well, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky was no different. So in 1866, July 23rd to be exact, the Red Stockings, the Cincinnati Red Stockings that you know, they are formed in a law office in downtown Cincinnati. Now, at this time, there's not a Major League Baseball. It's just a bunch of guys that get together and form these clubs. So the Red Stockings were just formed by lawyers and doctors and prominent citizens and businessmen in Cincinnati as a way to pass the time, which is, of course, why it's called the pastime. And they start forming this club. Other clubs around the town, Live Oaks, across the river in Newport, in Covington, and eventually in Ludlow, all of these amateur teams start to pop up. It becomes so popular in the 1860s that they have a grand tournament in September of 1866 where all of these clubs come together in Florence, Kentucky at the fairgrounds, and they have this big tournament where they can kind of, it's a meet and greet, right? Where everybody can kind of get to know each other and they start scheduling games. So now it becomes a thing. Well, again, there's not a major league. These are all amateur players. But then it starts to get popular everywhere else. The St. Louis's, the Bostons, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, the Philadelphias, Hartford, Connecticut. All of these places have these nines, as they were called. And the nines start playing each other, and it's obvious now that there needs to be some kind of organization, some kind of body of rules that we need to follow. And the National Association of Baseball Players is born in 1867. Right, so the following year, 1867, we've got this new body of work where these professional leagues can kind of play. But the thing was that you don't have professional players, so to speak. You might have one or two you pay, but you never paid a whole team, right? Until 1869. And 1869 changed everything. And I mean changed everything. Because the National Association of Baseball Players adopted a rule that said, henceforth, you can pay any player you want. You can pay the whole nine. You can pay whoever you want to play baseball. Well, it just so happened that the Cincinnati area took baseball so seriously that they decided to pay their nine. So, number one, the Cincinnati Red Stockings, and most of you probably know this, become the first all-professional baseball team. Now, the first all-professional baseball team means that all nine players, and then there was a sub, a 10th player, were paid professionals. They got paid to play baseball, as opposed to being amateur, where they were not paid. So this changes everything, not just because they're all professional baseball players, but because they are also a entity where they can go out and play other clubs across the country if you wanted to spend the money. And the Cincinnati people wanted to spend the money. So the 1869 Red Stockings become the first team, and they go 57-0. 57-0 is their record. They didn't lose a game. And this is the birth of fandom. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you never had a sport where a large group of people would come and watch you play that sport for a fee, and not only that, but become a fan of the team. So people from northern Kentucky, from Milford, from Dayton, all around this area, the tri-state area, they would come in to watch the Red Stockings play at Union Grounds, which is where Union Terminal sits today. And sports fandom is born. So if you're a college football fan, thank the Red Stockings. If you love the NFL, thank the Red Stockings. If you love college basketball in the tournament, thank the Red Stockings, because fandom is born right here in Cincinnati. It's where the fans came out to watch them play, especially a 57-0 team. They packed Union Grounds. But then, tragedy strikes in 1870. The Reds start off 25-26-0. They go to Brooklyn for a game on June 14th, 1870, and they lose 8-7 in extra innings. The 11th inning, they lose. The town loses their mind. How could the Red Stockings lose a game? Not only that, but the rest of the year they struggled. They lost like 6 games. So the powers that be for the Reds, the guys that ran the Red Stockings, realized that it's a passing fad. We lost some games. Attendance was declining. It's expensive to put these guys on trains and pay their salary and the hotels and the travel, everything that goes into running a baseball team. So they decide, you know what, we're not going to play in 1871. So the Red Stockings were only around from 1866 to 1870. That's it. Now, sidebar. The Cincinnati Red Stockings, established in 1869, are not the Red Stockings or the Reds that you know and love today. So when you go and see a shirt that says Cincinnati Reds, established 1869, that's not technically true. When you go look at the ballpark and you look behind the scoreboard there where it's got the big Cincinnati Red Stockings, established 1869. They were, but they have nothing to do with the current team. In a little bit, I'll explain why that is. So 1866-70, the Red Stockings. There's no professional baseball in Cincinnati in 1871. Remember, they disbanded because they're like, we're done with it. No more baseball. It's a passing fad. It's too expensive. 1871 comes on. Okay? So from 1871 to 1875, there's no professional baseball in the area. But just because there's no professional team to root for doesn't mean that the game was stagnant or nobody cared about it anymore. People underestimated how popular, especially in the river cities, how popular baseball was. Amateur teams started popping up almost daily in this era, 1871 to 1875. You had teams from Newport, Covington, Ludlow, Cincinnati, and all points in between, north, south, east, and west. There were tons. Every neighborhood had a team, and they would all find these places to play in open fields, and they would schedule games, and they would have leagues in the neighborhoods. It was a huge deal. Now, no professional baseball, remember, none. Nobody to go watch. Most people weren't going to go watch the local team down the street. Chug a couple, the German heritage we had, they chug a couple beers, they run around the bases, and then go home. They loved to play the game. But the Red Stockings disbanded and left no professional baseball. The National Association of Baseball Players in 1871 becomes a new league, and they call themselves the National Association. So they're like, well, wait a minute. Cincinnati people are like, we can have a team. And we don't need a team in Cincinnati. We tried that. We were the best. But we don't need a team. It's too much money. Enter Ludlow, enter Covington. And it's very important. This is the most important part, I think, of this lecture. Ludlow and Covington decided in 1875, they were already in this mix of all of these teams in the early 1870s that were playing amateur ball. They said, both of these cities said, I think professional baseball is going to work. And they were right. They paid their players. In April of 1875, the Ludlows, or Luds, or the Ludlow Baseball Club, became an actual professional baseball team, independent of the National Association. They didn't want to be a part of the league. They just wanted to do their thing and play whoever they wanted without any rules. Okay? So Covington Stars, they do the same thing, just a few blocks down. They start professional baseball in April of 1875. So now, if you're a fan of baseball and you're missing your Red Stockings, you've got two teams to root for, Ludlow and Covington. So the National Association is formed. Cincinnati doesn't have a team because Harry Wright, what did Harry Wright do? He left the Red Stockings. He goes up to Boston. They become the Boston Red Stockings. And then later they became the Atlanta Braves. But that's a whole other complicated mess for another time. Harry Wright's gone. The Red Stockings are gone. Professional baseball post 1875, Covington and Ludlow. Now, the teams in the National Association, they want to play teams and make money. Because even back then, baseball, as much as it was the pastime, it was also a business. So the Bostons, the Chicagos, the Philadelphias, the Hartford, Connecticut's, all of these teams, they wanted to come west, as we were known back in the day, the Queen City of the West, right? They wanted to come out here because they knew that there was a rabid fan base, and they would pay good money, a quarter a game, 25 cents, to get to the ballpark to watch baseball. So the Covington Stars build their grounds at 17th and Madison. So the lot where the Dollar General is 17th and 18th Madison Avenue. Facing towards the south is the grandstand. So home plate's going to the south. Over in Ludlow, they build grounds called the Ludlow Baseball Grounds, and they build it right on the riverfront. It becomes the first ever riverfront park in the tri-state area. And they build it off of Post and West and River Road, and it is where there's a warehouse there today, and there's bluffs. It's kind of a hillside, and if you go online, you'll see some of that in my film, Our Shining Stars. If you watch, maybe after you're done with this, you can watch that film, and you'll learn a little bit more about Ludlows and their grounds. So both of these grounds pack them in to watch Philadelphia come in, to watch Boston come in. And Harry Wright wasn't a stupid guy. He knew there's a lot of fans over there that will come see me play. So what does he do? June 1st, 1875, he brings his Boston Red Stockings club, who were the best of the best. Obviously, they had a lot of Red Stockings players. They go to Boston. They become a powerhouse. They're like the Dodgers, right, or the Yankees. And they come back to town in 1875, June 1st, and they play the Ludlows in Ludlow. And one of the coolest things that I've ever discovered when I was researching all of this stuff was Harry Wright came out to the mound of the pitch. Of course, the father of baseball, Harry Wright, comes out to pitch for the Boston club, and he reveals that he's wearing his old Cincinnati Old English C logo Red Stockings uniform. The crowd went crazy. So he doffs his cap and he's pitching in his old Red Stockings uniform. He was a showman. He knew they would pack him in to see him play, right? So not only does his brother, does Harry do, show off with his Old English Red Stockings logo uniform, his brother, George Wright, a Hall of Famer, is the first player to ever hit a baseball into the Ohio River. The ballpark was so close to the river that when George Wright hit it, it bounced a couple times, rolled down an embankment in Ludlow, and rolled into the river. It would not happen again until the early 2000s, 2004, when Adam Dunn did it. First time that it's ever been done was George Wright in Ludlow, Kentucky. So a little bit of a trivia there for you people that maybe wasn't aware how close the ballpark was to the river. The first river for a ballpark before Riverfront Stadium and before Great American Ballpark. So Ludlow, Covington, they're packing them in. People are coming over in droves across the Fifth Street Ferry, the Fannie Webster it was called, that would go from Fifth Street all the way to the ballpark, across the river, and they get off on this plank and they go up to Ludlow. They take the omnibus or they take the trolleys to Madison Avenue to watch Covington. It was the thing to do in the summer of 1875. They're packing them in. It's great business. Somebody in Cincinnati notices what's going on, and his name is Colonel John P. Joyce. He sees the packed ballparks at Ludlow, the packed ballparks in Covington, and he says, I need to check this out. So he goes to the Ludlow Stars game, big rivalry, of course, as they should be. Teams right next to each other. July 10th, 1875. Colonel Joyce, a member of the old Red Stockings, a businessman with some money and some clout and some connections, goes to Madison Avenue at the Star Baseball Grounds and watches these two teams play. The place is packed. It's unbelievable. There's so much fandom and excitement, and people are just enjoying themselves at a baseball game. He's blown away. He immediately goes back to his house, starts making telegrams, starts writing letters. In 2 days, July 12th, he has already organized a new Cincinnati Red Stockings team. He finds a guy to get the grounds over by the stockyards, a couple of blocks north of where Crosley Field would be at Finley and Westford. If you go north on Spring Grove Avenue a couple blocks, they would build the avenue grounds. All this is done in 2 days, mind you. He gets $10,000 together. He organizes, he gets 10 acres of land. He starts calling players. He takes a train out east, and he gets all of these players. And in a month's time, he already has enough players for a new Red Stockings team, because he and the rest of the business associates are like, wait a minute. Cincinnati dollars are coming over the river to watch Ludlow and Covington. All of these Covington people have these little, and let's face it, Covington and Ludlow were the little brothers of Cincinnati. Their mindset was, how dare they make all of this money on the game we invented, the professional baseball that we helped build. They're taking it. This doesn't make sense to us. So Colonel Joyce is like, we're changing that today. He goes and gets the players, right? From July the 28th to August the 4th, all 9 players that he finds arrive in Cincinnati. He puts them up at a hotel, and he decides to use the same uniforms as the old Red Stockings, with the Old English C on the uniform. If you've been down to the Reds Hall of Fame and you know a little bit about baseball history, you know about that Old English C. He decides he's going to stick with that tradition. So August 5th, they have their first practice. They practice, they get in their guys. People are starting to come watch them. Wait a minute, Cincinnati's got a new team? Well, let's check this out. So on August the 9th, their ballpark is not ready yet at Avenue Grounds. It's still under construction because they were building a big grandstand. They were building a place where carriages could come in. And they decide that they're going to ask Ludlow if they could use their grounds, since it's right across the river. Do you mind, Ludlow, if we use your grounds so we can play our games? We got a couple of games scheduled with Chicago. Well, Ludlow's like, Well, absolutely, because Ludlow knows that if Chicago's coming into town, they'll be able to play a game with them too. If they're in town for 3 days, they're going to play the Reds, they're going to play Ludlow, and they're going to play Covington. So, like, sure, use our field. We're going to get some of that money from concessions, and we're going to be able to put our Ludlow team out in the field to play them as well. So it's a no-brainer to them. This makes perfect sense. Come one, come all. Of course, Cincinnati, be our guest. Use our great baseball diamond in our grandstand, and they do. One of the one of the greatest games in this area, from if you believe the newspaper articles that tell the story. Obviously, we didn't have social media then, we didn't have TV or radio then, so you have to depend on the various newspapers that describe it. Every one of them does a great job. I really do miss that about today, is that we don't have that description like we used to, because we don't need it. But man, thank you for those writers and reporters back today, because they paint a beautiful, vivid picture for us. On August 9th, they have their first game against the Chicago White Stockings. Now, a little bit of trivia. Chicago White Stockings became the Chicago Cubs. So the first time Cincinnati comes back into baseball in August of 1875, after being away since 1870, it's against the Cubs. So any of you Cubs fans or Reds fans that have rivalries in the family with Cubs, you can say this, that the Reds beat the Cubs for the very first time, 13-5 at Ludlow. So not only can you brag Northern Kentuckians that the Reds beat the Cubs, you have to tell them that they beat them at Ludlow. So a triple whammy, if you will. So the Reds win 13-5. It's packed. 4,900 fans are there. But one of the coolest features of the game, in my estimation, is this. There were so many tickets sold, it was overflowing, and there were people in Cincinnati that couldn't come over to the game because there was just no tickets left. It was sold out. They all met at a sports bar called Holly's in downtown Cincinnati on Vine Street. They wanted to know what was going on, so they devised an unbelievable system. Here's what they did. They paid a man to stand on the fence in center field, and this man had a red flag and a white flag, and he would stand on the tall fence, 8-foot fence, and after every half inning, he would raise the flag for the run scored according to who did it. If the Reds scored a run, he put the red flag up. If the Cubs, I'll call them the Cubs for historical purposes, if the Cubs scored, he'd hold up a white flag. If nobody scored, he'd hold up both flags and put them down. That means there was none. Across the river, right across the river from Ludlow at this street, was a man who would take that score, telegraph it up to Vine Street. The sports bar at Vine Street would take it, and on a bulletin board outside where the crowd was gathered around and the beer was flowing, would put up a scoreboard and say, Reds 2, Cubs nothing, and the place would go crazy. So as the game went on, more and more people would congregate on Vine Street to catch that score. They'd get the score, and at the end of the game, Reds win 13-5. But what an incredible system of getting, it's like Twitter or X, call it what you will, live tweeting, live streaming the game with a flag man baking in the boiling summer sun of Cincinnati. You know how hot it can get in August. And he's holding up flags each time to tell the person across the street so he can telegraph it to Vine Street. Incredible piece of history there. I always wanted to know whatever happened to those flags. You talk about historical artifact. But anyway, the Reds in Boston play on August 16th. Fans are coming out to Ludlow to watch them play. The Reds played Ludlow, of course, and the Reds beat them 12-2. They played the Stars. The interesting thing about the Stars is August 31st, they packed them. I want to specify something here. I don't think I mentioned it before. Ludlow and Covington both had pretty good teams, but if you had to pick the best team, it would be Covington. They had more future MLB players. They had better quality players than Ludlow. Not by much. They were just a step above Ludlow, and they traveled a little bit further. They had a little bit more money to spend, so they would play in Maysville and beat them, and they would go down and play these teams in Louisville. Ludlow did too, don't get me wrong, but Covington would destroy the teams, and they were very, very good. Covington was known as the champions of Kentucky. You'll see ads in papers. Kentucky, Covington Stars to play Cincinnati Reds. Covington, the champions of Kentucky. That's what they were known, and they were nationally known. They would be in the papers in New York, in Chicago, in Boston. The Covington Stars were known as a very, very good independent professional team. So when the Stars and the new Reds play on Madison Avenue on August the 31st, everybody who's anybody is at that game. It is packed. It is 6,000 fans. And if you can imagine that plot of land at 17th and Madison, the parking lot right where the underpass is, and it's hard to judge now because they had to dig into that underpass, but that was all flat land, and there was a 400 by 400 foot square lot which was made into a baseball diamond, and then you would just have fans in a giant circle roped around, and then the ladies were in the grandstand because that's how you did it back in the day. So Cincinnati comes over in an omnibus. They play. It's crazy. Here's the thing: there's no lights in 1875. There wouldn't be lights until the 30s, right? So they play. It's a tie because of darkness. They have to call the game. So 5-5 was the score. So now the tension is how we have to solve this. We have to, we have to have a tie-breaking game. So on September 11th, after the Reds had opened up their new field, first they played in Covington, then they go over to Avenue Grounds, Cincinnati, and the Stars played the Reds over there, and the Covington Stars beat the Reds 6-2. So most people would say the Reds were the champions of the area because they tied them, and then they played that other game, and they beat them at their home ground. That was a big deal. So it was kind of thought Covington was the best. These did not sit well with Cincinnati. They thought they were the best. And believe me, they had a great team. They had great players. I mean, think about it. Colonel Joyce goes and he gets all of his players from the East, right? And he brings them over to Cincinnati and builds this new Red Stockings champion team. Problem was they were good, but they were not great, right? So September 11th is that game with the Stars and the Reds, and they have they talk about wait till next year, right? We're going to get you next year. There's that rivalry, and it's unbelievable. We have the Reds, we have the Stars, we have Covington. We are spoiled. Baseball is back in the Greater Cincinnati area. The Reds are back as an independent team. Remember, they're not in the league yet. 1875. They're just an independent team. They just started in August. July and August was their first time, so they're not part of the league. Covington, Ludlow, they're independent. They're not a part of the National Association, but there's other teams from all over coming in to bring in their dollars and playing and making money, which is what it was all about. So, 1875 season closes. Ludlow has a great year as a professional team. Cincinnati's up and coming. They're going to do well now. Covington, there's already talk about they're going to have this great tournament with all these teams because you've got 3 dominant professional teams. All the teams across the country are going to come here. The problem was Cincinnati didn't see it that way. Why? Business. In 1876, the Stars are starting to build their team. The Ludlows building their team for their new season. They're ready to go. 1876, Ludlows are going to be great. We're going to improve. Covington's like, we're going to be great. We're going to improve. We're going to have more people. They actually made improvements on their field. And the Reds are adding players for them. Here's what happens. The Reds decide there's a new league that's starting called the National League, which takes over for the National Association. So remember, 1875, an independent team plays. We now have 1876, the National League that you know and love. If you know the Reds playing today, 1876, it starts National League. Covington and Ludlow both sent representatives to the meetings to join the National League, as did Cincinnati. Cincinnati goes there, and Cincinnati has a plan. They're going to take over. And here's what happens. One of the things that they decide to do is they decide we can't compete. We cannot compete with Covington and Ludlow. They're stealing our dollars. We want a monopoly in the Greater Cincinnati area. New York says, that's a great idea. Boston says, hear, hear. Let's just be the league. No team can operate. They start thinking, how can we make this? What do? And they're making their bylaws and their laws and their regulations for the new National League of 1876. They come up with, because Cincinnati started this. Remember, this was their idea. They got everybody to come on board later. Said, we need this. This is for the good of all of us. They come up with something called the 5-mile clause. Article 5, Section 2, and it reads like this. Every club member of this league, the National League, shall have exclusive control of the city in which it is located, and of the territory surrounding such city to the extent of 5 miles in every direction, and no visiting league club shall be allowed to play any club in such territory other than the league club therein located. What does that mean? It means if Covington's got a team and Boston comes into town, Boston is forbidden to play Covington. They're only allowed to play the Reds in Cincinnati on their ballpark to make the money. If Philadelphia wants to come in and play the Reds, Stars like they did in 1875, they can no longer do that as a member of the new National League because of the 5 mile clause. There's no, you cannot play a scrimmage game, a practice game. You can't practice on their field. You have to play the team in the city, and that city was Cincinnati, and it has to be within 5 miles. And that rule still exists today. Now, over time, as the years went on, Covington tried very, very hard to have a team in Covington because it was such a rabid fan base in Northern Kentucky for baseball. In 1913, of course, the famous Covington Blue Sox, which I did a film on. You can watch that on YouTube as well. They had to join a new league because MLB wouldn't let them have a team in Major League Baseball. They joined the Federal League, which was an outlaw league, right? And rewind a little bit, a couple of years, in 1901, as the American League is starting to form, Charles Comiskey of the Chicago White Sox was in talks with to possibly, now this is just a rumor, possibly get some funding to put a team in Covington. But he was friends with August Herman, the Reds owner, so he called up and said, hey, would you mind if I do this? And August was like, no, you can't have a team this close. 5 mile clause, you can't do it. Not allowed to do it. So Comiskey's like, all right. So he takes his team, St. Paul, Minnesota, and he goes to Chicago, and they become the Chicago White Stockings. Another what if, right, in history. But this rule changes baseball because now the National League has exclusive rights, which is why the American League was formed. Because wait a minute, we want our own league too. So now we have the AL and the NL. But this rule squashes, destroys, obliterates the hopes of Covington or Ludlow forevermore having professional baseball because the Reds said, sure, we're going to use your field, but just wait till next year. We're going to pretty much tell you guys can go somewhere because you're not allowed to have these teams play. Now, the Stars played still as an independent amateur team. They held on for the rest of that summer, but towards the end of the summer, they realized that there was no way they were going to be able to maintain, right, this, having a team because nobody's going to come see, no offense to people from Milford, but nobody's going to come see the Stars and the Milfords. They're just not going to. The same case for Ludlow. They're not going to go to Ludlow to watch second-rate teams when they can go to Cincinnati and see the Bostons and the Reds play, right? It makes sense. It's obvious. It's just not the same thing because of that 5 mile clause, which pretty much ended any kind of hope. And it was because the Reds wanted exclusive territorial rights to this area. And why did they come back in the first place? Because of the success of the Stars and Ludlow. So 1876, ironically, the season begins, and obviously the Stars are like, well, we got a team, we might as well play some games. Their very first game was an exhibition game, which the Reds scheduled. Hey, we'll come over to your place and play, like that final knife in the back. And they played an exhibition game, and the Reds beat them 7-4. They also played Ludlow and beat them pretty handily. So we now have the Reds in the National League. They last until 1880. So in 1876, 1880, the Cincinnati Reds are in the National League. And I'm not going to be able to wipe this all off because I'm using a T-shirt. So 1882, the Reds are now in the American Association. The National League kicks them out for selling beer on Sunday, and that's a whole other episode another time. So there's no baseball until 1882, the professional Cincinnati Reds that you know and love today. So you can trace your history of Cincinnati baseball. The same team that Ellie De La Cruz plays for, go all the way back to 1882. That is actually the start of the Reds franchise, not 1869. Home of professional baseball? Yes. Red Stockings' first professional baseball team? Yes. Not related to the Reds today. So 1882 Reds, the American Association, they last until 1889 when that league folds. And then in 1890, the Reds rejoined the National League when they're like, you know what? Maybe you could drink beer on Sunday, right? 1890, National League Reds, and that's where they've been ever since. And it's all because of Ludlow, Covington, having a dream and a vision, knowing that baseball was still popular, knowing that there were teams across the country that would come here to play because they knew they were going to get a good game and they were going to pack in the stands and make that money. That was the whole reason that they were doing this anyway, to make a bunch of money. And also the fandom starting here. There's that rich rooted history of Cincinnati Reds baseball that has seeds planted in northern Kentucky. So having that special bond, we go over now to see the Reds games, but now you have, hopefully you've learned something today that we have a part in that. It's not just that we're fans from across the river, but also Cincinnati. We put them back. If there's no Stars in Ludlow, would there be a Reds? Maybe. Maybe they come back later. Maybe they come back in 1882. But you didn't have that first club to come back and get that interest back. Because remember, after the 1869 game, they're like, we're done with baseball. They stopped going. But Ludlow and Covington said, we have a vision and a dream. We're going to start professional baseball here. And it worked. And then the Reds, being the big brother, kind of put their hand on their head and pushed them down, said, thanks for everything. Thanks, but we're going to take it from here. Thank you very much. And that's where we are today. The Cincinnati Reds, they're still around, still a great franchise. They're not the oldest professional team. That would be the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves, actually, like I said before, of the Boston Red Stockings fame, they eventually make it to Atlanta, so they're technically the oldest team. But professional baseball and fandom began right here, Queen City of the West, and the River Cities here in northern Kentucky. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cam, for an excellent presentation. And I'm sorry about your T-shirt. I feel bad you're using a
Hey,
T-shirt.
I had to find something.
Okay. So let's go ahead and, Heather, you got that trivia question. We want to repeat that.
Yeah.
And it's our winner.
So the question was again, what was the name of the rule the National League came up with in 1876 to keep other professional teams from playing in the National League cities? And that answer was the 5-mile clause, and our winner was Joey Witterstater from Facebook.
Congratulations, Joey.
Congratulations, Joey. You sound like an upstanding young man. I hope to meet you one day. I actually know him, so that's why I said that.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, Heather, did we have any questions? I saw one just pop up. Do you?
Yeah. One just came in, and that's the first one I've seen, and it is, did you grow up a Reds fan?
I absolutely grew up a Reds fan. I grew up here in the 80s. I moved away in 88. I watched the World Series that the Reds won from South Carolina. I then moved to Detroit. I came back here in the 90s to watch Reds baseball, and I'm so blessed and thankful that I get to work with the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, a childhood dream, right? I get to do things for the team I rooted for. I've gotten to meet my heroes. I've got to meet Pete Rose and Ken Griffey Jr. and all of those players I dreamed of one day being. But then I realized that I wasn't going to be able to be a baseball player. What's the next best thing? I'll be a filmmaker and tell their stories. So, absolutely diehard Reds fan. That again, I'm so blessed that I get to still do work for them. I mean, it's you have to pinch yourself sometimes. It's incredible.
And how can people, if they want to see those documentaries that you've done, how would they be able to access?
You could go to YouTube, Cam Miller Films, my page, my channel. It has all of the films from the Covington Stars, like I talked about tonight, the Covington Blue Sox, which of course was instrumental in getting Smoke Justice built. I'm still waiting for Mr. Dickman to give me my free pass for lifetime beer, because without my film, he wouldn't have had Smoke Justice. I kid him all the time. I've also has other historical films, the Latonia Racetrack, the history of that. The Flood of 1937. There's a lot of films that I do. My day job is doing things for the Reds and the school districts and clients that I have everywhere, stretched out everywhere. But my passion is doing these history films, local history films that I can, my own time and dime, put together and tell the stories that they're cool to read in a newspaper and article, and they're awesome to go see the exhibits at the Behringer-Crawford. But I like to give that visual aspect and tell the story of things that you might not know. And I will continue to do that as long as there's enough hours in the day to do that. And go to my YouTube. You can find them. I'm on social media at K. Miller Films, Facebook K. Miller Films, Google K. Miller Films. You'll find all of my work.
Wonderful. Did you want to talk about some of the other things that you're working on right now, like the
Yes, well, if you're a Reds fan, and hopefully you are because you joined me here tonight, you joined us for this presentation. I'm working on a film right now which will premiere in September at the Reds Hall of Fame and Museum. It's called The Machine in Reds Country, and it's the most ambitious film I've ever done. It tells the story of the Reds from 1970 to 1979, the era of the Big Red Machine. But I wanted to do this film a little different. I didn't want to do a film where it just tells you about Pete Rose and Ken Griffey and Dave Concepcion and George Foster, all those heroes, the Great Eight, as they're known. You know them, you love them. Their story's been told a million times. But there was 116 Reds players that played from 1970 to 79. There was more than just the Great Eight. There's the Doug Flynn's, the Darrell Cheneys of the world. These guys that never got that, notoriety because they weren't superstars, but they would come in and do great things and held that team together. You need backup players to make your team successful. The bench is important. And I want to kind of shed light on them a little bit. Also, tell the story of Reds Country, which is why the film's called The Machine in Reds Country. Without the success of the Big Red Machine, it only happens because of Reds Country. One of the most interesting stats that I ever came across, the Reds at one time in the 70s were the second smallest market in baseball. Kansas City was at the bottom. Right above Kansas City was Cincinnati, and then all the great, bigger cities. Even though they were a small market, second smallest market, they led the team and they led the league in attendance. They were always the top of attendance because people were coming in to watch them at Riverfront Stadium and pack that place in 55,000 strong. So it wasn't just a Cincinnati team. It was Reds Country, Indiana, West Virginia, Louisville, London, all the way in Kentucky, all the way to the top of Ohio. They would all come to Riverfront because it was so easy to get to. You jumped on the expressway. One of the great quotes Bob Housen said is, I like the fact that most people can get on and they have one stoplight in their town, they get on the expressway, and they're here in 4 or 5 hours to watch the ball game and drive home. That's why they put the park down there, because it was close to the expressway that just was built, and it was an unbelievable thing to see all of those fans come in. And all of those fans have stories. So telling those stories of how Reds Country was important, the fans' perspective, juxtaposition to the baseball side of it, and then that in the middle is this unbelievable force where they were the winningest team in the history of baseball during that decade. They have more records. They were a dynasty. You'll never see it again. It was that shot in the dark, that once in a lifetime thing where baseball was king, and it was right here in Cincinnati. So that film is coming out in September, so you can follow me on social media to keep updates on that. I'm doing a GoFundMe for that to raise money to kind of get the production costs down, because again, these films are not cheap. They're not free to do. So I'm doing that. I've had such a great response. It's been unbelievable. One of the things I'm doing is if you donate to the film, at the credits, you don't just get your name in the credit, you're going to get your name in the Riverfront scoreboard lights. So I have a old Riverfront scoreboard, and at the end, your name will appear like it's in the old Riverfront Stadium scoreboard. So you can find out all that on Twitter, Facebook. Find me on there, follow me, friend me, and you'll see my projects. Lloyd's Roller Rink, if you're a Northern Kentucky, you might know that. I'm doing a film on that because I'm crazy and like to do 75,000 things at once. So keep looking on Google. If you can find me on social media, we can talk. If you got some stories, I'm always looking for other films to do. So.
Okay, thank you, Kim. I know we do have some questions now. Heather, do you want to go through them?
Yeah. So our first question was, what did Covington and Ludlow do once they found out what Cincinnati was doing?
Well, there really wasn't much they could do. It's a rock and a hard place, right? They realized now in 1876 they built this ballpark. Both cities did. They got these players, and their backs are against the wall. What do? I mean, the league is the league. They're not going to compete. Ludlow was not going to be able to go in the money that Cincinnati could. Neither was Covington. So they continued on as independent professional teams for the rest of that season. Towards the end of the summer, they started to fade away. They disbanded. They came back, though, and played as an amateur team in the 1880s. You'll see in newspaper articles for the Stars playing Maysville and Milford's and Cummingsville and Dayton and Lexington. So they still played, but it was there would maybe be 2 or 3 professional players on the team and not the whole 9. They've stayed the course, both Ludlow and Covington, for as long as they could, but eventually, like everything else, it kind of lose money. You don't have that momentum that you had. But there was, to answer the question, there's nothing you could do, right? There was just no way to compete with the money of Cincinnati. Like I said, the big brother just put their hand on the head and said, thanks for what you did, but now we're going to take over from here. So it's unfortunate, but there's a history there, and I think it's important that we tell that history.
And as you did your research, what surprised you the most?
I would say finding out the attendance figures of some of these games. 5,000 people in a 400 by 400 foot lot is crazy to me. I knew that they were popular, both Ludlow and Covington, but seeing how they would pack them in, it's just incredible to me. Besides the fact that they were able to even exist in the first place is a miracle to me. What are the chances that Covington and Ludlow, these 2 little river city towns, had enough clout to bring in some ball players to have a professional baseball team and take a chance? I mean, that was a big gamble for both of them, but they saw that there was still love. The Red Stockings were gone, yes, but there was still a love and a passion for the pastime, and they capitalized on it. And it's just the luck of the draw. Business is business. They were able to withstand that crush of the Reds when they came back to existence. And it's a shame, but then again, I'm just so proud that my hometown had a team that helped bring the Reds back into baseball in the 1870s.
And someone else had said that they had thought that the Boston Braves became the Milwaukee Braves.
The Boston Red Stockings, they become the Boston Red Stockings. Milwaukee didn't become the Milwaukee Braves. The Milwaukee Braves become the Atlanta Braves. So that was kind of the trajectory. Red Stockings, Braves moved to Milwaukee, moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta, and then of course the Atlanta Braves are still around today. So, but remember, that first Boston Red Stockings team was made up of mostly Cincinnati players when they decided to go up there and try their lot in a bigger city, and they were the best, and they won 4 straight years. They won the World Series. It wasn't called that then, but they were the champions 4 straight years. So it's kind of interesting to see that was the trajectory, how it went from Cincinnati to Boston to Milwaukee to Atlanta, and that's the oldest professional team, not the Red Stockings. But I fought for years. I used to do tours at the Hall of Fame, and I would get the side eye from some of my bosses when I would tell them the story. As you can see, this is the 1882 Reds, who were the first team, and I'd always say 1869 was not this. And they're like, don't tell that story, Cam. But it was all in good fun. History's got a lot of little quirky things like that, and it's just always the best thing to me to find out these little things that you don't understand. You think but then you research a little bit and you realize, it's interesting that Atlanta's the oldest team. Nobody ever talks about that. They always say Cincinnati. It just kind of rolls off the tongue. Cincinnati Red Stockings, the oldest team in baseball, but technically that's not true. But we are the birthplace of professional baseball, so at least we got that.
So I did see that Ray had asked some questions for Heather and I, which is not normally what we get.
Oh, good.
He wanted to know how we found you, Cam. And I know that you were involved when at the museum, we used to have brown bag luncheons. Yes. And I know that you had one of your documentaries came out, and I remember you doing a brown bag luncheon here. And then we've reeled you in for History Hour since.
It was a Civil War documentary I did there about the September siege, and I remember that was a big one. That was a fun one to do, to go through the timeline of September of 1862 with my friend Casey Head, who was my co-director on that, and we both lined up the days when we thought we were going to be attacked by the Confederates, and it was just a fascinating story to tell along. We did a short film on it, and we premiered it there at the Behringer-Crawford. That was awesome. It was a packed house. I loved every minute. That was really cool.
Yeah, I don't know how you first got involved with the museum. I don't know if you have a wonderful story to share about the museum.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going there as a kid, and then when I moved away, I always remember when I got back in town, I would take my kids there all the time. And then as you guys started to grow, and I was doing my film thing, it was almost like there was this natural. We had to come together at some point. I mean, how could I be a historian in this area and not be a part of Behringer-Crawford? And I'm looking forward to doing more things with you guys because again, I cannot. I mean, there's not enough accolades in the world that I can shower you guys with. You guys do such great work, and I'm so happy to be able to do things like this, and then follow you guys on social media, see and the videos you post and the pictures that come out. There's so much greatness and cool things at Behringer-Crawford. So if you haven't been there, please. I was just talking to somebody on Twitter the other day and said, "Where's Behringer-Crawford?" I said, "Let me tell you where it's at. You'll find it. I'm going to tell you." So yeah, again, kudos to you guys. I mean, you guys are the ones that make all this happen. Really.
Thank you, Cam, so much. We couldn't do it without great historians and people like you. I know that we did have another question. What was Philadelphia's history to becoming the Phillies? Do you know that?
I don't know too much about the Philadelphia baseball history. It's something that I mean, there was the Philadelphia Athletics, who became the Kansas City Athletics, who became the Oakland Athletics, who are now going to be the Las Vegas Athletics. So I do know that story, but I'm not really familiar with the Philadelphia Phillies and their history. But now that you say that, what's going to happen is when I'm done here, I'm going to get into some comfortable clothes and I'm going to research the Phillies because now I'm interested.
Because you've got so much time, free time on your
I
hands.
have so much time on my hands.
All right. I don't know if Heather, if you had anything to share or anything else that you've seen maybe on Facebook or anything.
Nope.
Okay, well, I think that's going to be it then. Oh wait, we did get, are you going to wear a suit like, oh, he meant Money Mac. Is he talking, he wrote Connie Mac, but is it our Joe Burrow, is that who he's talking about? Money Mac?
Connie Mack was the manager for Philadelphia that would wear one of the few that would wear a suit in the dugout. So maybe that's what it is.
That's right.
I should just continue to wear suits. I try to do these when I do these lectures or presentations to kind of give it a formal affair. But I don't know if today was a wise with the heat. I don't know if that was a wise choice. But if you see me out and about in this vest and a Reds tie or a Covington Stars tie or one of these newsboy hats, you know, okay, there's a guy that knows some history. At least I might not know what I'm talking about, but I look like I know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cam, for another excellent presentation. Can't wait till you join us again for another wonderful lesson in history.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. So Heather, if we can go ahead and get our slides up, we'll go ahead. We have a lot of fun things going on at the museum. We are celebrating our 75th anniversary. So we do have a wonderful display with that. So there's actually 18 more days from today until our 75th anniversary on July 5th. I don't know if anyone's been following along on social media. We've been doing countdown videos, which Cam, I would love to get you to do one if you'd be willing to come in and do it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So we do have the exhibit, The Legacy of Behringer-Crawford Museum, 75 Years of Art, Culture, and Community. Each floor of the museum has been transformed to include some of the earlier artifacts that were on display when we first opened, including taxidermy and fossils. We invite everyone to come and visit and rediscover the museum. Also on display for sports fans, Northern Kentucky sports legends of the 1950s, an exhibit celebrating the athletes, coaches, and the teams that shaped our region's rich sports history. Please come and see that. On display until August 3rd is Driftwood, The Life of Harlan Hubbard. Inspired by Jessica Whitehead's acclaimed biography, this exhibit explores the life, art, and legacy of one of Kentucky's most beloved artists and thinkers. Also on display is Harlan Hubbard Ripple Effect. This exhibit shows Harlan Hubbard's influence on countless writers and artists. The contributors are from our region and are essayists, poets, novelists, painters, and such. And so please come and check all of those exhibits out. The 2025 Music at BCM concert series is off to a great start. This Thursday, we have Easy Tiger. They perform original rock, blues, and pop. It's going to be a great time, great for the whole family, for music, fun. We'll have food from Skyline Chili, so grab your camping chairs and your chairs and blankets and join us. The full schedule can be found on our website at bcmuseum.org. And also, we invite you to meet Duke, a lovable therapy dog and the star of his own children's book, Duke, the Best Dog in the Whole Wide World. Duke and his co-author, Bill Fowler, will be making a special appearance at BCM on Sunday, June 29th from 2 to 3 for a Chippy's Family Fun Day. Families can meet Duke in person, enjoy a reading from his book, and make a doggone awesome craft. So this event is included with museum admission. Seating is limited. So registration is required by June 22nd. Just call the museum at 859-491-4003. Our next Northern Kentucky History Hour is going to be on July 1st and is also sports related. It's going to be with Grady Brown, Charlie Coleman, and Mike Swagger presenting on the Northern Kentucky Athletic Directors Hall of Fame. So please tune in for that. If you have a topic you would like to see on the program, please email me, Mary Jane, at communications@bcmuseum.org. I would love to hear your ideas. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest Curators Chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. Please like and subscribe. That's all we have time for this evening. Thank you again to all of our sponsors and our supporters of BCM. Until next time, take care, everyone, and good night. Thanks again, Cam.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.